Let's go back to that moment. The question hung in the air, pregnant with implication. Not just for Elon Musk, but for every tech giant who has built their fortune on a scaffolding of public support. Jasmine Crockett wasn't just speaking to Musk, she was speaking through him, to an entire system that has for too long escaped the reach of real scrutiny. Because what does it say when the wealthiest man alive can't answer a question that a schoolteacher in Kansas or a factory worker in Ohio might answer without hesitation? Crockett's words weren't barbed. They were clear. They were precise. They didn't accuse, they invited reflection. But the silence that followed was louder than any denial could have been. And this is where the conversation deepens. It's easy to focus on the drama of the moment, the optics of the richest man in the world stumbling, the virality of a clip that dominated social media. But if that's all we see, we miss the lesson. Because what happened in that room wasn't just about a man's inability to answer a question. It was about how we've allowed certain people, certain institutions, to exist above the very accountability we demand from others. Let's talk about what Musk represents. He's often portrayed as the ultimate American dream, an immigrant who came to this country and built revolutionary companies from scratch. Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, the Boring Company, and now X, the platform formerly known as Twitter. These aren't just brands, they are symbols of future thinking, of disruption, of the idea that one person, with enough brilliance, can reshape the world. But the truth, as always, is more complicated. Tesla didn't rise from a garage. It rose from a government loan. SpaceX didn't get to orbit on sheer innovation alone. It did so through NASA contracts and taxpayer dollars. And while Musk's vision may have propelled these companies forward, it was public infrastructure, public investment, and public trust that gave them wings. Yet despite this, the narrative around Musk is often one of self-made genius. The cowboy capitalist who defies regulation, mocks government inefficiency, and champions a brutal form of meritocracy. He doesn't just push the envelope, he tears it apart. And in doing so, he has crafted an image that is more myth than man. That's why Crockett's question landed like a thunderclap. Because it pierced the mythology. It reminded everyone watching that even the most powerful among us, especially the most powerful, must be answerable to the people footing the bill. It also reminded us of something else, that accountability isn't just about dollars and cents. It's about values. Because when we give someone billions in federal support, we aren't just making a financial investment. We are co-signing their vision. We are saying, this is who we trust to carry our collective hopes for progress. And what happens when that vision begins to sour? What happens when the platforms they control become megaphones for hate? What happens when the technology they pioneer leaves behind entire communities? What happens when the innovations they promise fail to deliver, or worse, cause harm? Let's look at the track record. Tesla, for all its environmental upside, has faced repeated allegations of unsafe working conditions. Workers at some facilities have reported injuries, racial discrimination, even retaliation for organizing. At the Fremont factory, a former black employee described the workplace as a racially segregated plantation. California's Department of Fair Employment and Housing even filed a lawsuit alleging that black workers were subjected to constant slurs and left to work in more physically demanding roles with fewer opportunities for advancement. Elon Musk, he dismissed many of these claims as overblown. Called regulators, unelected bureaucrats. Mocked labor protections. Doubled down. Then there's X. Since Musk's takeover of the platform formerly known as Twitter, hate speech has spiked dramatically. Numerous watchdog groups have flagged a rise in anti-Semitic, racist, and transphobic content. Advertisers fled. Civil rights groups raised alarms. Musk's response. He invited previously banned extremists back onto the platform, citing free speech absolutism. But speech is never neutral when amplified at scale. And platforms, like governments, make choices every day about who to elevate and who to silence. So when Jasmine Crockett asked her question, she wasn't just poking at a billionaire's ego. She was challenging the fundamental disconnect between public investment and public values. Because if we, as taxpayers, are building the launchpads, the charging stations, the regulatory frameworks, shouldn't we also have a say in how those platforms serve the public good? That's not socialism. That's democracy. And it reveals a deeper crisis, not just with Musk, but with how we, as a country, define success. We reward disruption, but not responsibility. We elevate visionaries, but rarely interrogate their visions. We celebrate innovation, even when the benefits of that innovation are hoarded at the top, while risk and harm are pushed down. This is what made Crockett's confrontation so powerful. She wasn't just a politician reading talking points. She was someone who had lived through inequality. A black woman from Texas, a former public defender, standing across from a man who holds more financial power than most governments. In many ways, the hearing became a metaphor. One voice, long excluded, demanding accountability from a system that too often protects the powerful. And the aftermath proved just how deep the discomfort ran. Musk, days later, posted vague comments on X about being targeted by leftist politicians. His supporters called the hearing a circus. But the clip, the question, it wouldn't go away. Because it tapped into something people had felt for a long time. That the billionaires who claim to be building the future aren't building it for everyone. And that leads us to the heart of the matter. If $4.7 billion can't buy accountability, what exactly are we paying for? It's not just Musk. Amazon, Google, Meta, all of them have benefited from government contracts, tax breaks, subsidies, and policy leniency. But rarely are they made to answer for how their platforms and technologies shape society. Rarely are they required to explain how their choices affect democracy, labor, climate, or community. What Jasmine Crockett did was remind the world that money doesn't just flow one way. It creates obligation, it creates expectations, and it creates a mandate, not just to build things, but to build responsibly. Now, you might be wondering, what happens next? Will this moment lead to stricter regulations? Will Congress reevaluate how it funds private innovation? Will hearings like these become more than political theater? The answer depends on us. Because democracy isn't just something we inherit. It's something we demand. It's something we build, the same way we build roads, schools, satellites, and yes, even rockets. In demanding better from the people we empower, whether they sit in Congress or in Silicon Valley, is part of that work. Jasmine Crockett's question didn't just expose Elon Musk's discomfort. It exposed a vacuum, a space where moral leadership should exist, but too often doesn't. We don't need our innovators to be perfect. But we should expect them to be accountable. Especially when they build with public money. Especially when their actions shape our public life. We should expect them to protect the public good, not just their profit margins. We should expect them to answer hard questions, not just from investors or journalists, but from representatives of the people. Because that's what democracy is supposed to look like. It's supposed to be messy, tense, full of hard conversations and moments of reckoning. But it's also supposed to be fair. And right now, too many people in power play by a different set of rules. This video isn't about taking down Elon Musk. It's about building up something better. A political culture that doesn't bow to wealth. A technological future that's equitable. An economy that works not just for shareholders, but for workers, communities, and families. It's about remembering that $4.7 billion isn't abstract. It's real. It's yours. It's mine. And if we're going to spend it building the future, we deserve a say in what that future looks like. Maybe that's why one question had such an impact. Because it reminded us, in a time of noise and distraction, that words still matter. That silence still speaks. And that sometimes, the most powerful thing we can do is ask the right question, and refuse to accept anything less than a real answer. So the next time someone tells you that oversight doesn't matter, the next time a politician asks a question and gets brushed off, remember this moment. Remember that even the richest man in the world can be held accountable, if we choose to hold him. Because democracy doesn't fail when the powerful don't answer. It fails when we stop asking. In Jasmine Crockett, she's still asking. Fade to black.